This is our report. It's there. All right? And when you go to Parliament this afternoon, you will get your copy. I think I will be on safe grounds, and the body director may bear me out here, if I say that this will be the first time, am I right, that the mid-year report is getting to Parliament before the recess period. So this is an accomplishment in keeping with this government's mantra that we will improve transparency and accountability in government. All right, the fact that you can get this report out in just over a year of this government in office, right, for the first time. For the first time, it's critical. And secondly, when you get your copy of this report, the substantial nature of it, right? You see the size is even bigger than budget speech, right? Because we didn't skimp on details. We thought that as part of that accountability framework, that we should, as far as possible, give you a full detail of what went on in the economy in various aspects, not only production. The economy is not only about production, in all aspects. And you will find this report welcome reading in terms of the analysis and the substantial tables and data that have been provided. I would like to compliment my staff, all my staff, for being able to produce such a report in a record time. It's my guidance, but it was their hard work that produced such a report. In terms of some highlights, because as I said, you will get your copy later on and you can take out the more details of it. More bad news for the naysayers. The economy grew by 2% this year in the first half. This is compared with 0.9% last year. Now, as you know, we had indicated the economy grew by 0.7% last year, but this has subsequently been revised to 0.9%. You will find this happening all the time as more information comes in, all right, because it means less estimation than we would have had to do at the time when we put out the report. This very good performance was attributed largely to growth in the mining and quarrying sector. That sector grew by 65.7% year on year at the half year to half year, 65.7%. Gold increased year on year. When I say year on year, it's half year to half year, right? Say June last year to June this year. Gold increased by 94.3%. Bauxite increased by 2.9%. Other growth poles were other crops, which grew by 2%, livestock by 0.8%, fisheries by 2.1%. In that good news, there was some bad news, of course. The agriculture sector contracted by 10%, principally as a result of huge shortfalls in sugar, right? Sugar was down 30%, rice down 26.2%, and forestry down 13.1%. As a result of these critical areas, rice and sugar, the manufacturing sector contracted by 14.1%. All right, because these two sectors dominate the manufacturing sector. The outlook is still good. Because of the shortfall in rice and sugar in the first half, which we are not projecting to be made up in the second half, which will be sort of offset by the substantial increase over budget in gold. Now, at the budget time, we projected gold to come in at 550,000 ounces. Our projection is for 650,000. For 650,000 for the latest forecast. So that will have a bit of an offset. And our outlook for GDP for the rest of the year is 4%, which more or less is in line with what the IMF predicted earlier this year, but will be slightly down from our budgeted forecast of 4.4%. We're slightly down. We're being conservative because we think that performances in some of the other sectors might take us back to 4.4, but at this stage, we are revising our growth rate to 4% for the rest of the year. In terms of our balance of payment, our overall balance of payment has improved to a surplus of $12.1 million US dollars from a deficit last year at the same time of $58.1 million US dollars. Our reserves are healthy. These have been up to $634.6 million US from $626.9 million US at the same time last year. In terms of our monetary, our broad money, which includes cash, demand deposits, time and savings deposits, these grew by 1.8%. Our inflation, last year, as you remember, we had a bit of a deflation at the half of the year. We have inflation this year at the half year of 1.1%. Credit to the private sector has increased 3.9%. Pushed by personal lending, which went up by 19.3%, and mortgage lending, which went up by 4.9%. In terms of our fiscal, our overall fiscal surplus was cut in half from $17.9 billion last year to $8.8 billion this year. But there's a story behind that, essentially. I'll quickly go through the story just now. But our revenue collection have increased by 9.7% at the first half of the year. And our non-interest expenditure increased by 32.9%. And our capital expenditure increased by 89.4%. Although I can indicate to you, our capital expenditure increasing by this substantial amount doesn't say much for our rate of implementation relative to the budget. As at June, our rate of implementation was just over 25% relative to the budget. But if you remember last year was not a normal year in the sense that expenditure was held back because there was no budget and because of the elections and so on. So spending in the first half was severely contracted by, in the accordance with the Constitution, spending was limited to 1/12 of the previous year's budget. So with a normal year, you'll expect expenses to be far greater than last year, ordinarily. Secondly, last year, if you remember, we paid wages from 1st of July, going forward. So there would have been no period January to June in 2015 to compare with. So that increase will be reflected more than it should. Thirdly, for the first time in the history of our budgeting, constitutional agencies were voted as a lump sum, all right? And it's a huge lump sum too, when you add all them together. They were voted as a lump sum, and they were treated as transfers, okay? And not only that they were voted as lump sum and treated as transfers, but the law requires that within 1 month of the passage of the budget, all of these agencies get their money en bloc. So it's not as if we can cut it up in 12 pieces over the 12 months of the year. We have to give them at one shot the entire sum that has been voted. So that will have a significant impact in our first half going forward now, every year, because you'll have that huge chunk of money that you have to give to all of these different agencies. And it will be made worse whenever you have elections, because, you know, when the Ghana Elections Commission, which is a statutory agency, has to have all that money to run elections, it will reflect itself then. And finally, for the first half of last year, we made transfers to Gaisuku of about $3.8 billion. This year, as we have indicated in the press, we have transferred the entire yearly sum, the sum voted for this year of $9 billion within the first half. So all of those new features would have conspired to increase the expenditure in the first half by 89.4%. It could have been worse if our capital spending relative to the budget was higher. But we still maintain a surplus on our overall account, and revenues have been buoyant even in the face of declines in VAT revenues. Okay, so that essentially is for the half-year report. While I'm just going to deal quickly with an issue. I walk with the papers here. There's an article here in the front page that it says Durban Park GDF advances violate law, right? And there was another one, I think I had the papers here, where there's a screaming headline that says government overspends budget by $3 billion or takes $3 billion out of contingency fund. It comes also from the beacon of truth. My staff told me not to go easy on this one. I will. We had last year indicated to the press that we were prepared to run sessions for journalists on, financial, various financial aspects of government budgeting. That offer is still open, and perhaps a little time, a half hour, 1 hour session for those who are willing. We are prepared to do that, right? Finance 101, if you want to call it, a preliminary insight. Because I don't know what's the intent of some of these articles. Perhaps there is something behind it. But there are two papers in, two financial papers that will be dealt with by Parliament this afternoon. Financial paper one for about $900 something million deals with advances from the contingency fund. And it's contingency, right? Contingency fund. As you know, the Minister of Finance under law, if an unforeseen or emergency situation arises, it can go into the contingency fund to meet the expenditure and then seek parliamentary approval afterwards for the expenditure that already been done. Okay? So the first paper is in respect of that. All right? So you spend and then you seek parliamentary approval, as long as within the law. Then there's what is called straight supplementary, which means you have to get the approval of the parliament before you can incur the expenditure. So if this afternoon Parliament knocks out paper number 2, none of that expenditure can take place. Right? None can take place. It's what we call a straight supplementary. Okay? And invariably that happens when you take a broader look, particularly half year. You take a look at who's spending what, where, make an estimate of what not going to be able to accomplish, and you try to go into the growth poles, those areas that are spending faster than necessary or can engage in new programs. And so you have to go back to Parliament to seek a supplementary provision. And that is what paper number 2 is all about. We have not spent $3 billion from any contingency fund. And it's so patent, I don't even know how people which decent editor will put something like that when there's already 2 papers in front of Parliament. One where it has always been explained, when you go to the contingency fund, you don't have parliamentary approval as yet, but an emergent situation or unforeseen situation has come up. And the second one, which is perhaps rare, is a rare occurrence, because I don't know how often it took place in the last government. That is the occurrence that should happen. That is the occurrence that should happen. You shouldn't be buying cars and whatever else from the contingency fund, because those don't meet the tests. Don't really meet the tests of unforeseen or emergency. All right? But you have to go back to Parliament and request a parliamentary approval, get a debate and so on. That's what we are doing. In the large paper of 2-point-something billion, that's what we are doing. We are going to seek Parliament's approval before we get involved in the expenditure, something that was rare under the previous administration. Right? You check and you see how many papers went to Parliament from spending from the contingency fund. They went so often, they raided the contingency fund, went back for it to be replenished, raided it again. They rarely went with a straight supplementary, seeking Parliament's approval before the expenditure took place. So this is in the context of us bringing back the accountability within the government. And of course, this business about Sharma, that Sharma saying that GDF violates law. All I'm going to say about this is that I spoke to him this morning. I won't say what he told me, but I think there was a bit of admonition him because he in this report said he did not see the paper. He did not see the paper, but he was commenting. You know, when I explained to him, if he saw the paper, and that's why I work with my estimates here, he would have come up with a different conclusion. So I'm just going to leave it at that. Okay? So you have these screaming and blaring headlines, which are patently false. Patently false. All right? So I leave that at that. And the other aspect of the bid review committee, I saw some strange noises being made about bid review. I don't want to say anything more. You know, Stevens is quite in order if they want to prosecute the case in the press. You know, but the long and short is there was no bid committee. This committee has been set up. You would think that it will be supported. All I see on the bid committee, everybody writing about it, is something negative. Something negative. You will think that this committee will be supported in its infancy. All right? But the long and short is the committee is there. I met with the committee. We went through certain formalities. All right? And as you know, it's a learning step. It's a learning step. The law doesn't provide for regulations of how the bid committee will work and all these kind of things. So these have to be developed. Okay? And it's a learning process. You know, I have these people doing this job, and I don't know what I'm going to pay them yet. But they have already agreed to do the job. You know? And it's only about 2 or 3 weeks ago that Cabinet, in conformity with the law, set rates. You know, how you have to pay before the committee actually hears the case and so on. So those are little things, and you will think that people will bear with the committee. Instead, you have all these sensational things in the press. You know, every minute somebody runs to the press with some sensational article, rather than allowing the process to smooth itself out, and Mr. Stevens gets his day before the committee, so to speak. I don't know that running to the press will speed up the work that has to be done, you know, but if he feels so, then he may continue prosecuting his case in the press. The place to prosecute his case is before the bid protest committee. That's where his case has to be done. In terms of budget preparation, we have started budget preparation. It's well underway. The budget director is here if you really want to know anything more where that is concerned. As you know, it's an open book secret that we said we're trying to bring the budget out this year for the first time in maybe 4 decades, if we were able to achieve that. We are working extremely hard. Some odds and hurdles we have to jump, but we may not make the Olympics, but we will certainly try to make a Guyana standard, right, where this is concerned. You know, it's not that the bar is any lower where this is concerned. Student loan agency, which has been in the news. I am not going to comment on anything further except to give you updates where we are. Before I give you an update, let me say that again, it's a topical issue, and responsible reporting, you know, will do us all put all of us in better stead than it seems we want to do. I saw some sensational reporting on the student loan agency. People are quoting me correctly, because I see the uplifted comments, quoting me correctly and then ending up with a conclusion that, you know, is artefatum, you know. But I've stayed away from responding or anything, because for me, largely, except for a few individuals, the press doesn't care to hear any proper side of your story. You know, what they publish, they think that is what should rule. So I then take the position that so be it. You know, we have to find a different medium of getting our message out. I saw a letter from an individual calling herself Hema Prasad. This is the second time I saw this Hema Prasad writing on matters to do with student loan agency. Only this time around we decided to check. And the people at student loan agency, they checked over the weekend and they came in early this morning, they checked again. There's no Hema Prasad. There is no Hema Prasad who owes the student loan agency anything. Much less said, in the letter they said that she paid $450,000. She went in there to the student loan agency and she paid $450,000 just prior to the announcement of the award. And when she heard the award, she ran back in and asked them how much more she has to pay to conclude. But let's, for the time being, we don't put away the fact that this is a fake person. But let's deal with the contents. By way of a quick example, suppose you own a house and you're in arrears of rates and taxes. A letter comes to you and says, listen man, you're in arrears of taxes. You're afraid of your house being sold at parade action or something. You run quick to the mayor city council, okay, in November, and you pay up everything. You're smiling, you're happy, you're going home. A couple days afterwards, the city council brings out a notice and says, amnesty. Amnesty for all those who are in arrears. What do? Do you run back to the mayor city council and say, but wait, hold on. Can you give me the amnesty that based on what I... No, they will never do it. Would they? No. When you bring those things out, you bring it going forward. So this individual claims in the article that she went back. She went back to the student loan after hearing about the Jubilee Award to find out whether she could benefit or how much more she will have to pay to bring it. Clearly, how much more you have to pay is based on how your $450,000 was apportioned to the debt that you owe. And anybody in banking will tell you, if I pay $450,000, the first thing the bankers will do is write out all the interest. And if anything is left, they're going to push it to the principal. If nothing is left, your interest starts building up again. Standard banking practice. So I don't know, sometimes, and papers sometimes also don't take the time to find out whether these things are fake. Or maybe they know and they just allow the article to run and then seek a comment afterwards from the ministry or whichever individual. But I'm sure, if they had the time enough before they run and print these sensational articles, that some of these won't see the light of day in a newspapers. And by the way, there's no such thing as current accumulated interest. The deal says 75% of the accumulated interest. There's no such thing as current accumulated interest. 75% of the accumulated interest. Okay? So if you haven't paid a cent from the day you take your loan to today, interest is building up. If you want to take advantage of the Jubilee offer and pay off before the end of this month, 75% of the interest that has accumulated from the day you took the loan to the day you pay off, on or before August 31st, will be written out. Right? So there's no current thing. And similarly, if you can't pay off but you want to bring yourself up to date, then 50% of the accumulated interest, that is from the time you took the loan to the time when you're about to make the payment to bring yourself current, 50% of that interest that accumulated will be written off. So I hope that part is extremely clear. And as a result of this offer, as at August the 5th, on the 75% rebate, 42 persons have benefited, paying $19.9 million, paying off for their loans, $19.9 million, and benefiting from an interest rebate of $9.3 million. So it seems to be generous. They benefit from more than half. And in terms of the 50% rebate, as of August the 5th, only 2 persons had taken up the offer, bringing their account up to date. They paid $134,000 to the student loan agency, and they benefited from a rebate of $129,000. Okay? I must indicate to you that I am pleased with responses in terms of the reactions of people calling in to the student loan agency to find out their balances, find out how they can make payments, and we have done a lot. We need to perhaps tell you a bit more, if you ask her, about what we've done and what we intend to do by way of making payments easily for the borrower. Also, I want to just quickly give you some figures, perhaps, in all of this here, really. Most people borrowed at $127,000, as you know, because it was only last year that the fees were raised. But even at last year's fees, a person who does a 4-year degree program, regular program, will end up paying $5,684 per month for the next 15 years after the 1 year. I want you to get a figure, $5,684, right? That's how much? 28 US dollars a month, roughly? Right? 28 US dollars a month for the next 15 years. A person who does a law program will end up paying $7,868 per month for 15 years. $7,868 per month. A person who does law with a pre-law, sometimes you don't have the CAPE and so on, so you do a 1 year, what's called a pre-law, and then you go on the 3-year law program. A person who does such a degree will end up paying $9,335 per month. $9,335 per month. The big guys are really in the medicine. If you did a medicine degree, straight medicine degree, you will end up paying $21,885 per month for 15 years in repayment. And if you did a medicine with a pre-med, again, if you can't get on the straight medicine program, you might go and do a pre-med, a 1-year pre-med in one of those areas. If you did that, then you will end up paying $23,387 per month. Right? 23,000, slightly more than 100 US per month. So those are the facts in front of us when it comes to the issue of repayment. And except for the last two, and the medicine, where relative to monies that you get, it could end up being as much as maybe 5 to 10% of your income. The rest, I leave it to your lovely skills, analytical skills, to appreciate what is in front of you. All of the hullabaloo and the this and the that and the so on. This is what is here. $5,684 per month for 15 years. All you're required to do to pay. All right? And let me say lastly on this, that the student loan agency will be receptive to repayment plans. Right? They will be receptive to repayment plans. My final on the student loan agency is what I've said before. Every student, every borrower has a moral obligation to repay what is borrowed. If we don't, then just think about what will happen to our banking system, for example. If people who borrowed never repaid, they won't have a banking system, because the money that they are borrowing, right, it's me and you savings. And you wouldn't like one day when you turn up to the bank and your bank account says you're supposed to have $1 million, and the people at the bank says, you know something, we got a bit of a problem here. We lend John Jones $1 million and he didn't pay back yet. Think about it. I mean, being a little serious and thing, but just think about it. All right? There is no argument in my book, I don't care in anybody's book, That's their book. In this Minister of Finance book, there's no argument, none whatsoever, of you borrowing money, other people's money, and not paying it back. In some cases, I had people telling it to my face, they will not pay back any. We'll have to take them to court. That's what they tell me in front of my face. So, anyway, you live on your lawn. Finally, before you give you the floor, NIS. NIS. I wish to state on NIS that, as you will recall, NIS's investment in CLICO is impaired with extreme unlikelihood of them ever getting back their money. As a result of that impairment, NIS, as you know, has been suffering terribly, and not only NIS, but the beneficiaries in NIS have suffered terribly because their ability to raise benefits and so forth will obviously be constrained by the fact that they don't have this money, number one, and number two, that this money cannot be put to earn additional monies for them. All right? Now, since I think back in 2009, Parliamentary Resolution 82 of 2009, the then opposition, now government, had urged that NIS, everything be done for NIS to receive its money, to get back its money. And I am pleased to indicate that at last week's cabinet, on a paper presented by the Minister of Finance with various options, cabinet approved the government repaying NIS through non-negotiable Government of Ghana debenture certificates over a 20-year period at a fixed interest rate of 1.5%. The principal sum of $4,882,446,199. Yearly payments to begin 1st of January 2017. Right, and so in essence, we will be making, at the end of the 20 years, we would have paid over, in terms of principal and interest, by our calculations, $5,651,431,475.34. It's the best that the government can do at the moment, but it's substantially more than what NIS would have had if this investment continues to be impaired. I want to make a point here again. We have $9.5 billion out on the student loan agency, of which $5.7 billion is callable, which means it should have been paid. So to the extent that they don't pay it, somebody has to pay it, taxpayers. This is $5.65 billion that should have been with NIS, but who has to pay it now? Taxpayers. And you continue down the line. We had the case of Rhodesia, where we end up paying a debt that we should not have paid because of whatever, flouting the CCJ's order and so on. We end up paying 1-point-something billion. Okay? Higgs-Bush, BK, another 1-point-something billion we got to pay. And so it continues. You know, people may not want to hear, but that is the life of the government since it has come in. You have so many liabilities that are outstanding, and so many judgments that have been given. And in fact, I'm not even counting the amount that we transfer into Gaisuku, essentially. I was just being given something here. How much is owed by Gaisuku in PAYE? $5.2 billion. If they can't meet it, who do you think has to pay it? The government. And the government gets its money from taxpayers. So this is not an easy road. People have to understand the situation that we are actually in. We have inherited so many liabilities, and so many judgments that are now coming to the fore that we have to pay. right? Once it's a court judgment, we have to pay it. You know, there's no question about it. And these aren't small. They have many small ones, but they have some big ones also. Some big ones that are coming up. I mean, there's a judgment that Gaisuko will soon have to pay pertaining to Booker Tate. Right? That's a judgment. If you are already in the red, who has to pay it? I'm not saying government paying, but I'm saying you're in the red, and you're already having transfers coming from government. So technically, who's going to have to pay that judgment that Gaisuko has for Booker Tate now as a result of whatever? So all of these, you know, and then compounding all of that now is all this shoddy work that has been done on projects done in the past, whether it's Cato School, East Bank Road, you name it. Skeldon Sugar Factory, you name it, they pile up. So it is difficult trying to implement government's current program when we are under the gun, so to speak, with all of these liabilities, huge liabilities that are a thing. This minister, as I keep saying, wants to have a legacy of lower taxes. Lower taxes, right? And whenever he leaves, that one legacy I want, lower taxes. But how can you lower taxes when you face with all of these expenditure, which aren't even current expenditure, adding value, adding new value to people's lives and improving their welfare? But we will persevere. The new commissioner has promised me some urgent and radical reforms, continue the pace reforms in the GRA, and so we'll perhaps be able to increase our revenue intake, and that will perhaps boost our confidence about making some changes to taxation in the upcoming budgets. Right? Notice I didn't say budget, in the upcoming budgets. Okay, that's all that I want to say to you today. Oh, yes, Juanita is reminding me that there was a complaint on the alcohol that due to the changes early in the year pertaining to the, I think it's the VAT, or changing of the way how we assess taxes on alcohol. It affected alcohol use as an input into manufacturing things like, I would think, methylated spirits and certain other things that use alcohol. So last week, there were two bills that were laid, so to speak. One was a regulation, right, that had to do with some changes to the excise taxes, and it went unnoticed because I didn't see any reporting of it in the press. And the other one had to do with a Section 51, which will be dealt with today, order of Section 51 of the Petroleum Act, which will be dealt with today. In that regulation, there were some cleaning up and tidying up, and part of the tidying up was to do with removing alcohol to be used as an input, removing taxation, but on alcohol that is to be used as an input. And there's some couple of other tidying up there, which you can go to the excise regulation. And of course, happily, the private sector, I believe, is content with the arrangements that are in place to do with the recent imposition of the agreement, the Treaty of Chaguaramas, that they had said would have affected their inputs and so on. And I think they're dealing with that nicely with the Secretary General and through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Everything good can come out if we have goodwill and good intent, basically. And I'm happy that our private sector has been able to get some relief where that is concerned.